recording? Awesome. Thank you very much. All right, guys. So, we accomplished a couple of things. First of all, we reviewed the concept of equilibrium. We introduced the numerical example where we solved for equilibrium. Then we considered the impact of the first policy, of several policies we're going to be studying. This policy is called price ceiling, and the price ceiling ends up distorting the market, right? It ends up distorting the equilibrium. The market is no longer in equilibrium, the price is no longer in equilibrium, the price is 3 as opposed to 5. And of course the market quantities change. First of all, suppliers only bother to produce 1 unit. Buyers would like to buy 5 units. The market is definitely not in equilibrium. Instead, the market is now exhibiting a large deficit of 4. So it's not an equilibrium anymore. And yes, we are finding out by purely intuitive means that some people are hurt, such as suppliers, right, firms, and some people benefit. A few buyers who end up benefiting from that low price may actually benefit. But all that intuition really doesn't tell us much about the net effect of the policy on the market. In other words, how much are interests of those who benefit? How much do interests of those people improve? How much, or what's the size of the benefit of those who win from this policy? And what's the size of the harm done to those who actually lose from the policy? Now, can you see an easy, simple way to actually compare the harm relative to the benefit, to gain? It's almost like asking, how much does something make you better off? How much does something make you worse off? Do you like coffee? Does it make you feel better? More like attentive and whatever, is fresher or something? How much better? 5? Would you put a 6 on it? What value would you put on just how better off you are when you have a coffee? Whatever that is. Out of 100, out of 1,000, out of 1 to 10?
1 to 10, yeah.
Not 4.5. How about yourself? Does a cup of coffee make you better off? How much better off?
I'd say like an 8 out of 10 for me.
8 out of 10. So you can see the coffee definitely does a lot better job for this guy than this guy, right? Is there a way to really compare how much benefit do you derive from coffee compared to him? Do we have a real way to measure that benefit? No. You can talk, it's okay, whatever, but you can't really put an exact number on it. At the same time, maybe someone here is allergic to coffee, and I ask you, how allergic are you? Oh, it really makes me sick. How sick does it make you? Oh, really sick, like 15 sick or 25 sick, right? You can't, there are certain things you cannot put a number on. Guys, here, we're talking about firms being harmed. How much are firms harmed? How much are those who actually benefit from policy? In other words, those buyers who buy at the new lower price, how much do they actually benefit? See, it's very hard to put numbers on these things. This is why I'm going to use a moment now, and I'm going to show you a method of actually accomplishing precisely that. Putting a number on a benefit. To do that, yes?
Is that the set formula for like demand and supply? Or for P
These
equals 8?
These are not set formulas. These will change from example to example.
Okay.
Okay, so on the homework
But
number
just
1.
the numbers change? Or is it always minus Q?
Okay, demand is always going to be minus. And it may be minus Q, minus half Q, minus 2Q, whatever. But it's going to be minus because it's going to be downward sloping demand.
Okay.
Supply is always going to be plus. Sometimes plus Q, plus 1, plus 2Q, plus half Q, plus whatever.
Okay.
And this may be 1, 2, 0.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay? So, yeah, demand is always going to be downward sloping. Supply is always going to be upward sloping, but they're not going to be always, the same curves.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Now, question. Does the camera capture this side of the...
No, up to you, yeah.
Up
just-
to me? Very
yes.
good. Perfect. On this side,
Right there, yeah.
still
Yeah.
kind of? Okay, so we have a little bit more wiggle room on this side. So, let's here consider the following example, guys. For a moment, this is going to sound like it has absolutely nothing to do with what we're doing here. But then you will see the idea and we will connect the dots. Suppose we all take a trip to the beach. It's not particularly warm today, but we go down to the Keys, Bahia Honda Beach, okay, one of the 10 greatest beaches in the world. We're going to spend a day there. The problem with Bahia Honda is it's undeveloped. You don't have really like vending machines or anything there. So we get there, it's beautiful, it's sunny, it's really hot. After a few hours, we're really thirsty. And we're thinking, well, what are we going to do? And then, out of nowhere, a vendor shows up with a big cooler selling drinks. For simplicity, let's assume the vendor is selling 12-ounce drinks of, soft drinks of any sort. Whatever your drink of choice is, or water. And the vendor is selling these drinks at a certain price per can, per bottle. Okay? Now, each and every one of you will make a choice to either buy a can or not buy a can or a bottle. What are you going to base your decision on? First and foremost, price. Exactly. So I'm going to ask you guys. The vendor shows up. Soda for sale, $10 a can, $10 a can. Any takers?
No.
Nobody's thirsty enough. $9. $8, guys, it's warm out there. No, $7, $6, $5, anybody? You want to tell me you've never bought a can of soda for $5?
I'll be with the can.
Anybody, any takers?
I'll buy.
You'll buy, raise your hand if you're ready to buy one. Okay, so $5, okay, so we have two. At $5, two students are buying 2 cans, right? Each of you is buying a can. What if the vendor shows up and actually asks $4, not $5? Then obviously the two of you would buy at $4. If you were willing to pay $5, you would buy. So don't raise your hand anymore. Is there anyone who is now willing to buy at $4 a can? 1, 2. So at $4, 2 more students are willing to buy 2 cans, right? $3. Any takers? Raise your hands and hold your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So at $3, we have 5 more students willing and able to buy a can of soda. That brings us to 9. $2. Anyone? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At $2, we have 5 more. That brings us to 14, right? Is it working? Oh no, that's not. Okay, good. 14. $1. 1, 2, 3, 4. So at $1, 5. So at $1, we have 5 more. That brings us to 19. Okay? Is there anyone who hasn't bought a can of anything? What are you waiting for? 50 cents?
I planned ahead and brought my
Okay.
I was going to the beach.
Okay. So you abstain. Okay. You drink beer. No beer on the beach. Okay. So, what is this ugly thing?
Demand card?
Say it again.
Demand card?
Oh my gosh. Isn't this telling us exactly the quantity of soda you guys are willing and able to buy at a certain price? Of course, it is your downward sloping demand curve. So we just developed a demand curve for soda quantity against the price of this class, right? That's exactly what this is. Say it again?
That's a good example, thank you.
Well, thank you. So yeah, absolutely. We just found demand curve. Now, why does it look so ugly when all our demand curves so far were so cute?
We're using a straight line.
Because, exactly, if we're not talking about 245, but we're talking about 17,545, 17,548, and so on, these jumps are getting progressively smaller and smaller, and the whole thing becomes more smooth, right? So in big market, with thousands of consumers, demand tends to have relatively smooth appearance. But the most important defining feature of demand, remember, is the fact that it's downward sloping. And it is. It's a downward sloping demand curve. Very good. Now what are we going to do with this? Suppose that the vendor shows up and declares, soda for sale, price $2 per can. What happens? 14 students show up and buy the soda, correct? But among those 14 students, there's going to be 2 students who were willing and able to pay $5. You and who was the second one? Okay, very good. So 2 of you were willing and able to pay $5. Did you have to pay $5? No, the dude showed up, offered it for $2. How do you feel? You were so thirsty, you had a $5 bill, ready to spend it, and you got yourself a $2 soda. How does it feel?
Like I got ripped off.
You were ready to spend $5, and you got it for $2.
Oh, I got it, I'm sorry.
No, you got it for $2.
I got it. Oh, well,
Doesn't that feel like
I
a
got it.
fantastic deal? You were ready to, I mean, even if they asked you $5, you would pay, you would not feel ripped off. It's what you were willing to pay.
Yeah, okay.
And you didn't have to. No, it's fine. It's just, it sounds like a good deal, right? Just how good a deal is it? Can you put a number on just how good that deal is? It is $3 cheaper than what you were willing to pay, right? In other words, you were willing to pay $5, you only had to pay $2. How much did you save yourself by getting a good deal?
$3.
$3, guys. $3. Those $3 have a name in economics. It's called consumer surplus. It's your consumer surplus. It's a measure of just how good a deal you got. You were willing to pay $5, you only had to pay $2. You enjoy $3 saved that you were willing to spend, and you could save it because you got yourself a good deal. So you generated $3 in consumer surplus. How much did the other student who was willing to pay $5, how much did the other student save? Also $3. So together, those 2 of you who were willing to pay $5 only had to pay $2. Together, the 2 of you enjoy how much consumer surplus? 3 plus 3 is $6. Can you see $6 in this graph? Let me show you where the $6 is. Let me use the color. This is the price you had to pay. This is the price you were willing to pay. And this is the difference. Can you see that? What's the shaded area? It's 3 times 2 is 6. That's $6 in consumer surplus enjoyed by you and the other student who was willing to pay $5, right? Then, among those 14 students who are willing and able to pay $2, among those 14 students, there's another 2 students who were willing to pay $4. But they don't have to pay $4. They also get the soda for $2. How much does each of those two students enjoy consumer surplus?
$4.
Between 4 and 2, it is $2 each student. Together, the two of them, $4. Does it make sense? So this here is $4 in consumer surplus enjoyed by the other two students. And then, of course, there's 5 students who would gladly spend $3 on a can of soda, but got that can of soda for $2. Each of those students saved $1, enjoys $1 consumer surplus. There are 5 of those students, together they enjoy how much consumer surplus? $5 consumer surplus. Now, can you tell me what is the consumer surplus of all, by the way, we said at the price 2, 14 students are willing and able to buy, correct? Among those 14, there's also the last 5 students who were willing and able to buy that soda for $2 and ended up paying $2. How much consumer surplus do they enjoy?
No.
0. So, what's the consumer surplus of all consumers in this market?
15.
Correct. How did you get it? You add it up, right? 6 plus 4 plus 5 plus 0. That adds up to
15.
$15. Very good. Guys, $15 is the measure of consumer well-being in this market at the going price $2. Consumer surplus of $15 measures just how well off consumers are in that market at the price of $2. That's consumer surplus. Now, how would you transfer that idea of consumer surplus and measure it in this market in equilibrium? How would you find consumer surplus of all consumers in this market who bought 3 units at the price $5? Okay, let's learn from this example. How did we find that number $15? What does it represent?
People who save money.
The shaded area. It's measured basically by the shaded area, right? Shaded area. How is this shaded area defined? What are the boundaries of that shaded area?
How much they were willing.
Correct. So the top boundary on the shaded area is the demand curve, right? What's the bottom boundary of the shaded area? The price. So when you calculate the area below the demand curve and above the price, you find the number 15, which is consumer surplus. That make sense? That's consumer surplus. Now, can you find the area bounded from above by the demand curve, bounded from below by the price in this market? Can you see that area? Below demand, above the price. Can you see that area? What's the shape of that area? What does it look like? Below demand, above the price. It's a triangle. Can you see that triangle? Okay. That triangle, not that triangle, the area of that triangle measures consumer surplus. Measures consumer surplus. Now, we will measure consumer surplus for the rest of the session. We're going to be doing it so much, it's going to become second nature to you. So within a few classes, I'm going to ask you, what's the consumer surplus? And some of you will tell me, oh, it's that top triangle. And I tell you, no, that's not consumer surplus. Again, what is the consumer surplus? The difference between what you were willing to pay and what you had to pay. That makes sense? That's consumer surplus. What is the triangle? It's a measure of consumer surplus. Okay, that's how we measure consumer surplus. Consumer surplus is not triangle. You did not save yourself triangles when you got a good deal. Have you guys ever gotten a good deal on something? Do you remember how it feels to have a good deal? Did you walk home with triangles in your pocket?
No.
You walked home with dollars you didn't have to spend because you got a good deal, right? So consumer surplus are dollars you didn't have to spend. You were ready to spend and you didn't have to. That's what consumer surplus is. But we measure that consumer surplus in a graph like this, in a very simple way, by simply evaluating the area of a triangle above the price, below, that's not mine, below the demand curve, above the price. Okay? That's how we do it. So help me. Can anyone find the area of a triangle below demand, above the price? This is 8. This is 8. So, how tall is the triangle? 3. How wide is the triangle? 3. What is the area of a right-angled triangle? 3 by 3. Okay, guys? What would be the area of a rectangle? 3 by 3. 3 times 3 is 9. But we're not looking at the area of a rectangle, we're looking at the area of a triangle. What's the area of that triangle? It's half of the rectangle, right? So it's 3 times 3 divided by 2. Consumer surplus is measured as height of that triangle times width of that triangle divided by 2. 3 times 3 divided by 2. How much is that? $4.50, right? $4.50. That's consumer surplus. Now, you see how consumer surplus is calculated. You see the example we used to introduce the idea of consumer surplus. Is consumer surplus something real, or is it just a theoretical kind of calculation thing? Guys, just recall when you got a good deal. Guys, typically these shoes last me a semester, occasionally 2 semesters when they're especially well made. So I never buy me expensive shoes because they're really not, it's not worth putting too much money into it. They don't last too long. So when I go, I tell myself, okay, I'm gonna get me a pair of shoes, $40, $50 max. So I'm going buy me a pair of shoes before the beginning of the semester. I have $50 on me. I'm ready to spend $50. Last time I was shopping for shoes, I got really lucky. These were on sale. If these shoes fit like a glove, they fit like a shoe. They're fantastic. And if they cost $50, I would have spent $50 on them. They're actually pretty darn good. It's like a decent brand. I don't know what it is, but you can get something like that. Yeah. They were not just on sale. They were crazy discounted. I got them for $20. Guys, I had $50. I was ready to spend it. I saw those shoes. I tried them on. Yeah. If they asked me $50, I would pay $50. I wouldn't feel taken advantage of. I would be like, yeah, cool pair of shoes. But I got them for $20. Can you imagine that grin on my face? Just how wide was the grin on my face? $30 wide, guys. Okay, $30 wide. Because I had $50 I was ready to spend. I only paid $20 for it. I walked home with awesome pair of shoes and $30 in my pocket. Those $30 in my pocket were real bucks or theoretical imaginary triangular bucks. Very real $30. That makes sense? So you see, consumer surplus is not a theoretical, it's not a hypothetical sort of thing. It is very real. It's money you were ready to spend, you didn't have to. That's how we measure well-being of consumers in a market. But then again, how often do you get an awesome deal like I got on these shoes? How often do you get a deal like that on anything?
Black Friday.
Black Friday, once a year. Anyone gets a really awesome deal more often? I guess when you shop for a car, you bargain really hard, you get yourself a great deal, right? How often is that? Once in several years? So, look, we understand consumer surplus is a real thing. Those are real dollars. But again, how applicable is it to your everyday life when you only enjoy an awesome deal once in a very long time? Once a year on Black Friday, or once in a few years when you bargain hard for a new car. Does it really have applicability to everyday life? Like, what was the last time, guys, you went to Publix, you grabbed a gallon of milk, trying to get home as fast as possible, and you walked out of that Publix with a gallon of milk in your plastic bag with a huge grin, enjoying the fantastic consumer surplus you just generated? Is that how it... Do you always see people walking out of Publix with huge grins and like, yes, what a deal? You never see that. So how applicable is that concept to everyday life? Not particularly, right? Guys, this is the one thing I really didn't understand fully until I heard a story from my grandma. My grandma was born in something like 1920. So she was about 20 years old when World War II began. So she was a young woman. She was freshly married, and she had a baby daughter. The war started. She had my mom. So there she is,